Forgiveness begins where hurt is acknowledged. It arises from the moment you recognize that pain has entered your inner world, and that carrying it further will only deepen the wound. In forgiveness, there is effort, there is remembering, there is a quiet struggle between the desire to let go and the echo of what was done. Forgiveness is a movement of healing, yes, but it often starts from the level of the wound itself, and that is why forgiveness feels like relief. It loosens the tight grip around the heart, it softens the heaviness in the chest, it allows the breath to return to its natural rhythm. But even in forgiveness, there is sometimes a shadow of the past still present. The mind remembers, the story remains. The identity of the one who was hurt can continue to exist, even if the pain has softened. Blessing moves from a different depth altogether. Blessing does not begin in memory, it begins in awareness. When you bless, you are no longer standing inside the wound, you are standing above it. You are not negotiating with the past, you are stepping out of it. Blessing is not an emotional reaction, it is a shift in consciousness, a quiet, powerful decision to align with something higher than the experience itself. Notice the difference. Forgiveness says, I let this go because it hurt me. Blessing says, I send light because I am free. Forgiveness empties the pain. Blessing fills the space with presence. When you bless someone who caused you pain, something profound happens within you. The inner voice that once said, "Why did this happen to me?" grows silent. In its place arises a deeper understanding that every experience, no matter how painful, passes through you only to awaken you. Blessing dissolves the need to judge, it dissolves the need to be right, it dissolves the need to carry a story. And in that dissolution, consciousness expands. There is a moment, subtle, almost invisible, when blessing turns suffering into insight. You stop asking life to be different. You stop demanding fairness from the past. You simply allow wisdom to emerge from what was. Feel how different that is. Forgiveness repairs the heart. Blessing awakens the soul. In forgiveness, you still stand in relation to the other. There is an I and a you. There is a bridge being rebuilt. But in blessing, the separation itself begins to fade. You no longer see the other as the source of your pain. You see them as a participant in your awakening. Not because what they did was right, but because what you became matters more. Blessing does not carry emotional weight. It carries clarity. It is calm, it is spacious, it is quiet power. When you bless, you stop resisting what happened. Resistance is what keeps pain alive. Resistance is what keeps consciousness contracted. The moment resistance ends, energy that was bound in suffering becomes available for growth. Blessing is that moment. It is the instant the heart opens without needing permission from the mind. There is no tension in blessing, no inner debate, no replaying of events, only a silent recognition, this no longer defines me. Forgiveness heals the emotional body, blessing heals identity itself, and identity is where consciousness is shaped. When identity shifts, everything shifts. You are no longer someone who endured pain. You are someone who transcended it. This is why blessing transforms consciousness. Because consciousness is not changed by what happened. It is changed by how deeply you rise above it. Blessing lifts you out of the personal and into the universal. You move from my pain to human understanding, from my story to timeless awareness. And in that movement, something sacred happens. The heart becomes vast, the mind becomes still, the soul remembers itself. Blessing does not come from strength, it comes from awakening. And once consciousness has tasted that awakening, it cannot return to the narrow space where pain once ruled. Karma is not an external force watching and judging your actions. It is an inner echo, a pattern of energy created by intention, emotion, and identification. It continues only as long as the heart remains divided between what happened and what is accepted, between love and resistance, between awareness and reaction. The moment the heart aligns with love, karma begins to lose its power. Blessing is that alignment. When you bless, you are no longer responding from memory, you are responding from presence. You are no longer allowing old emotions to dictate your inner state. You are choosing to rest in a deeper current, one that does not flow from the past, but from the eternal. Feel the weight of that shift. Karma thrives where the heart is contracted. It feeds on resentment, guilt, fear, and silent judgment. Even subtle emotions, unspoken blame, hidden bitterness, quiet superiority, become threads that tie consciousness to repetition. As long as the heart holds these threads, the cycle continues. Blessing cuts those threads gently, without struggle, not by force, not by suppression, but by love. Blessing does not argue with karma. It dissolves it by changing the inner atmosphere in which karma exists. Just as darkness cannot survive in light, karmic residue cannot remain where the heart is filled with goodwill. When you bless someone, especially someone connected to pain, you are aligning with the same intelligence that governs compassion, growth, and balance in the universe. That intelligence does not punish. It educates. It does not seek revenge. It seeks awakening. By blessing, you step into harmony with that intelligence. Notice how the heart softens when there is no enemy inside. Karma is sustained by identification. The moment you say, "I am the one who was wronged," energy tightens around the self. The story becomes personal. The lesson becomes delayed. But when you bless, identity loosens. You no longer cling to the role of victim or offender. You become a witness to the movement of life, and the witness is free. Blessing shifts the heart from reaction to resonance, instead of vibraton. With hurt, it begins to vibrate with understanding. This vibration is not sentimental, it is powerful. It reorganizes inner energy. It reorders memory. It releases emotional charge from past events. That release is what neutralizes karma. Karma needs charge to repeat itself. Without charge, there is no return. Blessing removes the charge. You may not feel it instantly. Sometimes the mind resists. Sometimes emotions surface. But beneath the surface, something deeper has already changed. The heart has chosen alignment over defense. Love over control, trust over resentment. This choice is transformative. When the heart aligns with divine love, it stops asking, "Why did this happen to me?" It begins to ask, "What is life teaching me now?" That shift alone breaks cycles that may have existed for years, even lifetimes. Let that truth settle. Divine love is not emotional attachment, it is expansive acceptance. It allows everything to pass through without clinging. When the heart aligns with this love, it becomes fluid. Nothing sticks, no experience hardens into identity, no pain crystallizes into destiny. Blessing keeps the heart fluid. That fluidity is freedom. Each time you bless, you silently declare that you trust life more than you fear it, and trust is the highest form of surrender. In surrender, karma finds no resistance to push against, and without resistance, it dissolves, not dramatically, not violently, but quietly. Like mist in sunlight. Blessing is not weakness. It is the courage to release control over how life should have unfolded. It is the strength to let love complete what understanding could not, and as the heart stays aligned with that love, karmic patterns lose their momentum, one by one, until what once returned again and again simply does not return anymore. The wounded self is not who you are, it is who you became in response to an experience you did not yet understand. It is a protective shape formed by pain, memory, and survival. It speaks in the language of what happened to me, and it measures life through loss, injustice, and unmet expectations. This self is created the moment awareness collapses into injury. Notice how quickly the mind returns to old stories when pain is touched. The wounded self lives in memory. It is fed by repetition. Every time the past is replayed, every time the hurt is silently named again, the identity is reinforced, not consciously, but energetically. And the longer this identification remains, the longer suffering feels personal and permanent. A blessing interrupts this identification, not by denying the pain, not by pretending strength, but by shifting the center of awareness. When you bless, you no longer speak from the wound, you speak from the witness. You are not saying, "This did not hurt," you are saying, "This no longer defines me." There is a profound difference. The wounded self needs acknowledgement. The awakened self needs freedom. Blessing gives freedom. When you bless someone connected to your pain, the ego loosens its grip on the story. The inner voice that once said, "I was wronged," begins to quiet, not because the experience is forgotten, but because awareness has moved beyond it. Feel how the body responds when the story loses importance. The wounded self is heavy. It carries tension. It holds the breath shallow. Blessing lightens the inner space. In blessing, you are no longer defending your pain. Defense requires constant vigilance. It requires judgment. It requires separation. But blessing has no armor. It has no enemy. It dissolves the boundary between me and what happened. And in that dissolution, identity changes. You stop being someone who was hurt. You become someone who understands. Understanding does not mean justification. It means seeing clearly without emotional distortion. It means recognizing that every human being acts from their level of consciousness, and that pain is often the language of unconsciousness. This recognition softens the heart without weakening it. The wounded self resists this softness. It fears disappearance. It believes that letting go means losing importance. But blessing reveals a deeper truth. You do not lose yourself. You find yourself. Notice the relief that comes when you no longer need to protect an image of suffering. When you bless, you stop feeding the inner narrator that says, "This should not have happened." Resistance dissolves. And with it dissolves the sense of being trapped in a moment that has already passed. Time loosens its hold. The wounded self lives in psychological time, always returning, always reliving. Blessing pulls awareness into the present, where pain has no substance. In the present, there is sensation, breath, consciousness, but no story. And without story, the wounded self cannot survive. Blessing is not directed outward alone. It is an inner realignment, a silent movement of awareness away from identification and toward presence. The moment this movement happens, even subtly, suffering begins to lose its authority. You are no longer asking, "Why did this happen to me?" You are resting in, "I am larger than this experience." That rest is transformative. The wounded self contracts consciousness, blessing expands it, and in expansion the boundaries that once defined pain dissolve naturally. There is space, there is clarity, there is a quiet strength that does not need to prove anything. You are not healed because the past changed. You are healed because the self that carried the past I is no longer in control. Blessing returns you to the witness, the part of you that was never injured, never broken, never diminished. And once awareness rests there, the wounded self fades, not through struggle but through irrelevance. Resistance is subtle. It does not always appear as anger or hatred. Often, it hides behind silence, behind justification, behind the quiet belief that I am right to feel this way. Resistance is the inner refusal to let life pass through you completely. It is the tightening of consciousness around an experience that has already ended in time but continues to live within you. Feel how resistance feels in the body. The jaw tightens, the chest contracts, the breath becomes shallow. This contraction is where karma survives. Karma is not strengthened by what happened. It is strengthened by how long you resist what happened. The longer energy is held in opposition, the longer it seeks resolution through repetition. Resistance tells life, "I am not finished with this," and life listens. Goodwill speaks a different language. Goodwill does not fight the past. It does not negotiate with it. It does not demand closure. Goodwill allows. When goodwill enters the heart, the inner struggle ends. You stop pushing against memory. You stop arguing with reality. And in that surrender, something unexpected occurs. Energy begins to move again. What was frozen by resistance becomes fluid. Notice how softness allows movement. Resistance always keeps karma personal. It says, "This happened to me." It tightens identity around the experience. But goodwill dissolves that personalization. It expands perception. It sees the event not as an attack, but as part of a much larger unfolding of causes, conditions, and unconscious patterns. This seeing is not intellectual. It is energetic. Goodwill is not weakness. It is a conscious decision to stop feeding the loop. It is the refusal to let pain become a permanent identity. When you offer goodwill toward a person, a situation, or even yourself, you remove the emotional charge that karma needs to return. Karma requires friction. Resistance creates friction. Goodwill removes it. Without friction, the wheel stops turning. When you resist, you hold the posture of defense. Defense keeps the nervous system alert, the mind vigilant, the heart guarded. In this state, the same lessons return in new forms, through new people, wearing different faces. Not because life is cruel, but because understanding has not yet replaced reaction. Goodwill is understanding in motion. It does not say, "I approve." It says, "I release," and release is the doorway through which karma exits. Pause. Feel the relief in that word. Resistance keeps you tied to outcome. It wants apology, recognition, justice, or change, and as long as the heart waits for these, it remains bound. Goodwill asks for nothing, it is complete in itself. That completeness signals to consciousness that the lesson has been integrated, and once a lesson is integrated, it does not repeat. Goodwill shifts energy from the past to the present, from tightness to openness, from ego to awareness. In this shift, karmic patterns lose their fuel. There is no longer emotional investment in continuation. You are no longer preparing for battle. You are resting in peace. Resistance says, I will not accept this until life explains itself. Goodwill says, I trust life more than I need explanations. That trust is transformative. When goodwill replaces resistance, the heart becomes spacious enough to hold paradox. You can acknowledge pain without clinging to it. You can remember without reliving. You can see clearly without hardening. This spaciousness is freedom. Karma dissolves in freedom because karma depends on unconsciousness. The moment awareness is present and the HA-RT is open, the cycle breaks naturally. No effort is required. No struggle is needed. Only willingness. Willingness to soften. Willingness to open. Willingness to let goodwill replace the need to resist. And as goodwill becomes your inner climate, what once returned again and again finds no reason to come back. Because the door it knocked on no longer exists. Most prayers are spoken outwardly. They ask, they plead, they hope for change somewhere outside the heart, but there is a quieter prayer, one that is not formed by words, not shaped by desire, not directed toward an outcome. It arises the moment you bless another being, especially when the mind has reasons not to. Feel the stillness in that moment. When you bless someone, you are not sending energy away from yourself. You are releasing something within yourself. You are loosening the grip of judgment, softening the boundaries of identity, allowing the heart to step beyond its familiar defenses. This is why blessing works in secret. The mind believes it is doing something for the other, but the soul knows the truth. It is unburdening itself. Every unblessed relationship is a closed loop of energy. Thoughts return again and again. Emotions circle the same memory. The heart remains tied to an unfinished inner conversation. Blessing completes that conversation without needing resolution from the outside. It is a silent enough. Notice how the chest feels when something finally ends inside. To bless is to stop asking life to correct itself for you. It is to stop waiting for people to be different so you can be free. In blessing, you quietly withdraw your consciousness from dependence. You no longer say, my peace depends on what you did or didn't do. You say, my peace belongs to me. That declaration is liberation. The ego does not understand blessing. It sees it as surrender, as loss, as giving power away. But what actually dissolves in blessing is not power. It is bondage. The bondage of needing acknowledgement. The bondage of being right. The bondage of carrying emotional weight that does not belong to the present moment. Blessing releases that weight, and the heart, relieved of its burden, begins to rise. Feel the lightness that follows release. Every time you bless, you step out of the narrow room of self-concern and into a wider field of awareness. You stop seeing others as obstacles or threats and begin seeing them as mirrors, reflecting places within you that were asking to be freed. This is why blessing feels expansive. This is why it feels like breath after suffocation. You are not praying to be saved. You are praying by letting go. Blessing dissolves the invisible contracts you have made with pain. Contracts that say, I will remember this forever. I will stay guarded. I will not soften again. These contracts keep the heart vigilant and the soul tense. Blessing tears them up quietly, without ceremony, and in that tearing something sacred happens. You return to yourself, the self beneath roles, beneath wounds, beneath stories. This is the self that does not need protection. When you bless someone who hurt you, you are not elevating them above you. You are stepping beyond the need to measure worth at all. You are refusing to let another person's unconsciousness define your inner climate. That refusal is freedom. Notice how freedom does not shout, it whispers. Blessing also frees you from time. As long as resentment remains, the past feels alive. As long as bitterness lingers, yesterday breathes inside today. Blessing closes the door of time. The past returns to where it belongs, behind you without influence. In that closure, presence is restored, and presence is liberation. The deepest prisons are not built by others, they are built by what we refuse to release. Blessing is the act of opening the door from the inside. No struggle, no confrontation. Just a gentle turning toward light. You may not feel holy when you bless. You may not feel elevated or spiritual, but something essential shifts. The heart softens, the breath deepens, the mind loosens its grip, and slowly, quietly, without announcement, you realize that the one who has been freed is you.